right, well, good morning, guys. Pray for our brothers who are stuck in traffic this morning. Clearly, they haven't made it through the stoplight or something. I don't know. We'll we'll see what transpires, but we're here and we're good today. We've got it kind of made it to our last week of content, though we will meet next week. And in just a minute, I'll incentivize you to be here next week because that's going to be important. But at the end of the day, guys, really, I'm proud of you and I'm thankful for you. And I'm thankful for these past couple of months and showing up, and you get here at like 4:45 and you wonder, is anybody actually going to show? Is anybody going to be here? Do I have to drink all this coffee? Which is bad because I'm not a coffee drinker. But I appreciate it, and it really is motivating knowing that guys are going kind of in this direction. And I'm encouraged, and I've been fired up, and so hopefully there's been some encouragement and some steps and some progress for all of us in this journey. So go to lesson 12. We're on page 49 today. And let's look at some icebreakers, and these do relate to our topic, and it's kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So what is something that you appreciate most about the technology that's available to us today? And the flip side of it is, what do you find the most challenging about technology? So give you about 90 seconds, maybe 60. Jot down some answers in your books, and then we will chat about it here in just a minute. But give a little bit of thought to those two questions on page 49. All right, you done enough thinking? Find somebody that you're sitting next to. Look how nice I am to you. Find somebody you're sitting next to. Yeah, Carl, you're welcome. Pat, you're welcome. And chat through those questions on page 49. I do request that you stand up, though, because otherwise the blood's not going to be flowing. So stand up, chat up by the guys you're sitting by. Those two questions on page 49. All right, guys, back to where you started, which hopefully shouldn't be too far from where you are right now. So next week is our final session together, and while there won't be quite as much emphasis on the context next week, I have worked out details so that we will have a Hungry Man's Breakfast when we are done here. So come like legit hungry. This is not like wiggly bacon and powdered eggs. This is going to be legit breakfast. I'm excited about it. Fun way to celebrate. We'll end our time in here a little bit early that way. If you need to leave, a hard end at 7 o'clock. It will be more than available for you. And if you can linger a little bit and chat, it'll be fun time to hang out. So I'm excited about a big kind of breakfast after our time together next week. Hopefully that'll be motivating, better than a quick trip donut that I have provided along the way. So page 49 today. Lesson 12, Technology and Entertainment. Kind of interesting that as I was thinking about the different topics and how to put this in, it's kind of fascinating in the sense that my dad never had to have this like conversation with me. We had 5 channels. I feel like I sound like I grew up like 100 years ago. It wasn't actually that long ago, but it was like Channel 4, Channel 6, maybe Channel 18 sometimes, right? Didn't have a device in my pocket, didn't have any of kind of that access. And maybe some of you guys that are younger than me had a little bit more of this with your dad, but this is kind of a topic on steroids for us in 2024 that in 1994 wasn't nearly the same degree of intensity. And so, yes, it's phones, I get that, but it's a broad category today of not just a phone, but kind of all technology and entertainment under kind of a big umbrella today. We have all sorts of streaming platforms that we didn't have before, access to all sorts of movies or TV, and especially social media, which is a new game-changing dynamic for kids that are growing up today. Of course, we have online struggles like pornography, gambling, screen time, all of those pieces. And so this is really kind of accelerated in, I'll say, the past 10, 15 years or so in a way that we're going to navigate this as dads that most previous generations didn't navigate in the same way that we do. And I don't think we can really compare like each of these 12 lessons, which one's the most important. Probably different lessons are different impact for different ones of us. But man, few that we've covered have as much writing on it maybe as this one does. There's just so much to unpack as it relates to kids and technology. And if we don't get this one right for ourselves, and if we don't get this one right for our kids, there are really many bad outcomes that can show up if we're not on the ball on this one. And so I don't want this to be kind of a guilt trip today on bad outcomes, but I want it to be a positive approach to this topic. How do we navigate? How do we do it well for ourselves? How do we do it well for our families? And in the journey, how do we avoid World War III at home? Because that's another piece of the puzzle as well. And so on a topic like this, it can be easy to get negative. It can be easy to get discouraged and frankly overwhelmed. I have found myself overwhelmed on this topic. But I think if we start with kind of what we're aiming at, maybe it'll frame for us kind of a good path forward. And so middle of page 49, one of the overarching themes on the entire topic of technology and entertainment is simply protect. Protect. We've got to protect our kids. And we protect them from what comes into their minds. What comes into their minds. We protect them from ungodly influences. Ungodly influences. And then third, protect them from lifelong addictions. And so we protect them from what comes in. We'll look at scriptures in that in a minute. Protect them from ungodly influences. There are many. And we protect them from lifelong addictions. And there's a couple of those. Look, in a group of guys, we got to start with the top, addiction to pornography. And while historically this has kind of been a guy thing, in the world of teenagers and in the world of technology, pornography access and addiction is skyrocketing among girls as well. So if you got a bunch of girls in your house, you are not off the hook on this. If you got guys in your house, this is a huge one. One of the flip sides, if the pornography one scales a little bit heavier for boys and girls, the flip side is addiction to external sources of self-worth. That might scale a little bit heavier female than male. right? Likes and validations and how many people have seen my things is a self-worth issue, right? And comparing yourself to the fake and the airbrushed and the online expectations of perfection, that might be a struggle for your teenage daughter that you and I can't quite wrap our heads around. I'm guessing she spends more time in front of the mirror than you do, okay? It's just true. It's not right or wrong. It's true. And for as much as maybe our wives can't quite understand the strength of our eyes as it relates to looking at things and lust and that sort of thing, we might not be able to understand as well the strength of kind of this self-worth of external validation. And so even if we don't live it experientially, we still need to know it so that we are in it and with our daughters and navigating this world of not finding her worth in that way. There's addiction to gambling. Man, you cannot watch sports anymore without gambling all over the screen, right? When I was watching Brett Favre and Reggie White, no one was talking about over-under. No one was talking about point spread. There weren't any prop bets on how many picks Favre would throw, how many sacks Reggie would get, or like there was none of that stuff. In fact, sports leagues worked really hard to distance themselves from gambling, right? Can we say Pete Rose? All right? And now, not just is it like, okay, like this thing is married in unbelievable ways. I was in Ohio this weekend watching the Ohio State-Michigan game with a bunch of Ohio State fans. And all the conversation was about not if they were winning the game or losing the game, but how is this going to affect their playoff rankings? And a 33% chance of this and a 92% chance of this and the over-under. I'm like, holy cow, right? So this gambling thing. And oh, by the way, you know how easy it is to do that? Couple of clicks. How about access to or addiction to instant gratification? With one click, I can buy now. Even our vocabulary. Have you heard the word on demand? What's on demand? Instant. It's right here. When I want it, how I want it, where I want it. We must protect ourselves and our kids from these type of lifelong addictions. And then we got to protect them from themselves. Protect them from themselves. By the way, I need to be protected from myself, and you need to be protected from yourself. Any good dad would immediately remove their 2 or 3-year-old's hand from approaching the burner on the stove, right? We know that. Why? Because we love them. We protect them. We must apply at least as much diligence to protecting them from themselves in the area of technology as we would from protecting them from something that would burn them. We rightly applaud the dad that gives boundaries about hot things to their kids. They should. We ought to be providing boundaries and protection to our kids on this area as well that can burn them in very different ways. One of the major decisions, of course, regarding protection is when can your kid have his or her own phone and what protection will you put on their phone? I do not have a chapter and verse. I do not have a prescription for you. I can't tell you it's at a specific day and a specific time or whatever. My goal up here is not to give you a list of to-dos and to-don'ts. My goal is to give you and equip you and encourage you to make really wise decisions for your family and for your kids as it relates to these different topics. Here's what I do know. Don't give them a phone until you've thought it through. Because if you haven't thought it through, they will. And if you haven't thought it through, and if you haven't thought about boundary, and you haven't thought about protection, and you haven't thought about limits, and you haven't thought about access, and you haven't thought about how they're going to relate to other people, they're not ready because you're not ready. So the question isn't, when is my kid ready for a phone? The question is, when am I ready for my kid to have a phone? The old Sunday school adage is quite appropriate here. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see, right? Be careful, little eyes, what you see. The Bible actually has a lot to say about what comes in through our eyes. In the bottom of page 49 there, Matthew 23, these are the words of Jesus. I think they're pretty powerful. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Here's the truth, guys. All technology starts with our eyes. It's top of page 50. All technology starts with our eyes. What we see, what we focus on, what we look at, what we linger over. You first view it through a screen. There may be other senses. There may be other parts of the body that are stimulated or whatever, but it starts with our eyes, right? It starts with our eyes and what we look at. And I think what Jesus is getting at here is we need to be vigilant. We need to be unrelenting about what we allow in especially through our eyes. Because the contrast, he talks about light and darkness here, is really profound. If your eyes are healthy, meaning if the things you are taking in, if your senses are focused on the right thing, then your body, the rest of your life, will be full of the right things. And if your eyes are unhealthy, the things you are consuming, the things you are taking in through your eyes, it corrupts your whole body. You and I don't probably need to think very hard about guys we know, or maybe guys we've been ourselves, corrupting ourselves, corrupting those around us by what we're consuming and what we're dwelling on with our eyes. It might be somebody in your family, it might be a coworker, it might be a neighbor, but we could all tell icebreaker stories about guys that get consumed by these types of things and fall into all sorts of traps and categories that affect themselves and affect everyone around them in very negative ways. And so we've got to be diligent to guard ourselves, to guard our children from the great darkness that can come from unprotected and unfiltered access to technology. Unprotected access to technology can be a great darkness. Psalm 101 on page 80 for you. A couple of verses here. By the way, this entire psalm is really, really good. We unpacked it a little bit at the Father-Son retreat a few months ago. Don't be surprised if at some point in the future there is men's content here at Spring Creek all around Psalm 101. It's almost like the Christian man's manifesto, the Christian dad's manifesto. David is talking about, and he makes all of these I will statements, kind of these positive affirmations of who he will be as a man, what he will be in his family, what he will allow into his family and into his kingdom. Now, you may not be a king, but I think the analogy stands. David's words here are very strong, and specifically, I was drawn to these two verses in 2 and 3. David says, I will conduct the affairs of my house with a blameless heart. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. Guys, that is a great sentence. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. As I was putting together all of these lessons and prepping them and kind of working through the scriptures, I don't think any scripture smoked me as hard on any topic as this one does as it relates to technology and entertainment and the role of dad. I will not look on anything that is vile, and I will not allow anything that is vile to be in my house or in my family or impacting my kids. You want a simple phrase? You want a simple guiding principle as it relates to technology and entertainment? I won't look, and my family will not look on anything that is vile. Because I've got to conduct the affairs of my house with a blameless heart. Dad, we're in charge. We're the ones conducting the affairs of our house. It starts with us. And one of those kind of stake in the ground declarations is that I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. I think this is really good guidance. I think this is a really good filter. Should I watch this? Well, I don't want anything in my house to be looked at that is vile. If we filter our technology through kind of this grid of Psalm 101, I think we develop real clarity. I think we gain real ground on how to make these decisions for ourselves and our kids. And here's what I'll say. I know me, which means I probably have a hint into your mind as well. This is like a really good principle, but sometimes we really want to like push the principle. We want to kind of push the boundaries. So rather than asking, well, how much can I watch until it's vile? Right? That's really the wrong question, isn't it? How close can I stand to the edge of the Grand Canyon before I fall in? Well, look, I can stand here and not fall in. But you know who does fall in? The person that's at the edge. You know who doesn't fall in? The person who's not at the edge. So the upside of walking closer to the edge as it relates to vile and pushing the boundaries, there really isn't a lot of upside, is there? If you're having that self-justification of, well, it's not that bad, well, you should see what these other guys watch. Man, I think we've missed the boat on that. The issue isn't how far can I go. We're playing with fire if we do that. I think the issue is, what does wisdom say about, am I allowing things into my eyes and into my home and into my family that is vile? And if I am, man, I got to push back on that. I got to reset, maybe where we've been. We got to draw some new boundaries, maybe than where we've been. And you know where you put the guardrail? You put the guardrail where it's safe. You put the guardrail where if you bump into it, you still got a little bit of margin. You don't put the guardrail over the edge and hope that it holds. And so what are some of the main priorities here as it relates to technology and entertainment on the middle of page 50? Just a couple of encouragements for you guys. I'm in charge, not my kids. I'm in charge, not my kids. While this seems like low-hanging fruit, I really do want us as dads to be taking seriously our responsibility to lead our families, our responsibility to put these boundaries in place, to lovingly enforce those boundaries. And oh, by the way, it starts with us. It starts with us. It's really hypocritical to put all these boundaries on our kids and not have any for ourselves, right? Our kids are going to see through that really, really quickly. But I am in charge, not my kids. There's the old famous phrase, you've heard it before, rules without relationship lead to rebellion. As we do put rules, as we do put boundaries in place, explain not just the what of the boundary, but the why. Why is this boundary in place? Have that conversation with your kid. You might be talking a little bit over the top of there. That's okay. The why becomes really important. Not because they're arguing with you or you're arguing with them about where the boundary should be. It's because I love you, and it's my role to protect you. It's my God-given role to protect you, and I love you enough to protect you from yourself and from influences that are not for your good. And you might get some pushback. Maybe you got to put a little bit of the toothpaste back in the tube here. That could be a little bit hard and not the most pleasant, but here's what I know. Dad, you got to have the backbone. You got to be the leader on this. You've got to be the protector. And sometimes kids don't even know that they need to be protected. They're kids. They don't know. That's the point, right? And so for us, we've got to do this with initiative, with eagerness, with love, with kindness, and bring your kids into it rather than just kind of this heavy-handed dictator that's going to push them away. Let them know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you need the accountability and the boundaries as well. So I'm in charge, not my kids. Next, I set the priorities for my family, not my kids. Those things are similar, but I do think that there's enough difference here. This is especially true for what's allowed into our house in terms of content and how it's allowed into our house in terms of devices, subscriptions, etc. As a parent of 3 teenagers, I'm very aware of the peer pressure that they face on this topic. It's real. We've had plenty of conversations, and sometimes my kids have been outliers for things that they don't have access to or for things that they aren't allowed to do. And honestly, that's a tough spot to be. You've been a teenager. I've been a teenager. It's not fun to be the one who doesn't have the same opportunity, doesn't have the same access, who gets made fun of. Like that's not a fun place to be. I get that. And kids can be relentless. Please, Dad, come on. Dad, come on. One of my kids told me, Dad, I'm the only freshman in the whole school that doesn't have a phone besides the special needs kids. He didn't mean it negatively about the special needs kids, but he was making a point of how he was standing alone and how that was a hard spot to be. Yeah, buddy, I'm sorry. That's hard. I get it. Doesn't mean Dad caves. And I'm not saying you need to have the same boundaries about when a phone shows up that I do. What I'm saying is know what your boundaries are and have the backbone and love them enough to tell them why you're doing what you're doing. And here's the deal. If you guys don't have kids there yet, if your 3-year-old is running your house now, your 13-year-old will run your house when he's 13 or when she's 13. And so while the topics may be different, you've got to be the one leading and in charge and setting the priority when your kids are 3. If it's Bluey or the iPad or whatever it might be at a young age, set those boundaries and be the one that's enforcing them at 3, because at 13, it's going to be harder. The intensity is going to be ramped up even more. And when I say you win, I don't mean you're combative with your kids. What I mean is you are in the role that God has placed you in on purpose as dad, as protector, as leader, as a decision maker, and your decision stands. And your decision, and your wife, you work together, of course, your decision stands. And it stands when they're 3, and it stands when they're 7, it stands when they're 13, and it stands when they're 18 and bigger than you and stronger than you because you're still dad. And so you've got to set this standard all the way through. And then the third one is I take the necessary steps to protect my kids. I take the necessary step to protect my kids. How many of you have ever signed a waiver for a field trip? Or your wife probably has, right? Okay. Why do you sign a waiver for a field trip, an extracurricular activity, or every event they come to at the church? Why? Well, because it's a responsibility of parents to navigate risk in the life of their kids, because by definition, kids can't make good decisions, right? And so if we sign a waiver for the kids to go to the museum because we know that parental authority is required for that type of risk, you don't need a waiver in your house as it relates to technology, but you're the one that needs to be in charge. You're the one that needs to be making these decisions because by definition, our kids can't. Our kids can't. And we shouldn't put that burden on them. Just like you don't let the 3-year-old decide that he's eating Oreos for every meal. Well, that's fun for like a day. But that's not really a good habit to get into, right? And so just like somebody would probably say to a dad who's always feeding his kids Oreos, hey man, you might want to do something different on that. How much more important on this topic of technology and entertainment is our protection for our kids as we set the boundaries and as we make these good decisions. And so like I said, I don't have a rule of do's and don'ts for you on this topic because I think families need to make different decisions based on your circumstances. What I do know is that you and I cannot afford to be neutral on this topic. If you are neutral, you will get run over. You will get absolutely run over on this topic. I think that's a final blank there. Our families will get run over on this topic if we are neutral. I think one of the upsides of dividing up groups the way we did by kind of child age is especially on a topic like this. Your kids are probably in a similar spot as it relates to technology to the other dads in your group. And what we don't need today is uniformity that every dad must make the same decision on everything related to technology in your group. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that brainstorming with dads who are in a similar life stage to you, whose kids are facing similar decisions, who are in similar social circumstances, actually might be a really good way for there to be powerful brainstorming and powerful ideas, because your idea might positively impact the guy who's in the circle. His idea might positively impact you, and there can be great value in thinking through these things together, because chances are the things you're thinking through, he needs, the things he's thinking through, you need, and there's real power and strength in this conversation together. It doesn't mean that every household does the exact same thing. It means, hey, this is the topic we're facing right now. How do we approach this with wisdom? How do we approach this with intentionality? How do we approach this with appropriate levels of protection and wisdom as dads, as we are the ones that are setting these boundaries for our kids? And so I think a strong framework can grow from the conversation you have in your group. And while your application of it may end up being a little bit different than the guy next to you, you're going to gain a lot of ground by having these conversations together. And so a lot of it is, what are we aiming at? Asking the right questions, providing the right framework, making these decisions, and oh, by the way, encouraging each other in this process. You got a group of a bunch of 13-year-olds, you know what? You need to encourage one another to do it well, to take the initiative. You got a couple dads who need to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Man, encourage each other. It's worth it. Even if it's a little bit hard, do it because it matters. You got older kids, you got younger kids. Be encouragers of one another, that as dads kind of lead with wisdom and think about the scripture and put these boundaries in place, that it does matter and it is worth it. And you know that you're not alone. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway on all this. So look at your small group questions. Question 1 is a look back, of course. That's always good. But make sure in your group you spend sufficient time on questions 2 and 3. Brainstorm a list of topics and questions related to technology that as dad you need to figure out in your home right now. Whatever the age of your kids, what are the things you need to figure out right now? What are the pressing technology entertainment questions you have with your kids today? And then number 3, how confident are you currently in your approach to handling technology and entertainment options for your family? I am not and never have been a kind of a techie guy. That's just kind of not really my jam. So I've had to lean into other guys, some who are in this room, to help me on this topic. How do I do boundaries? How do I do limits? What do I do? What are the protection mechanisms on these devices or on this website? How do we do these filters? And I knew I didn't know what I didn't know, so I had to connect with those who knew what I didn't know to help me gain some ground on this. That doesn't mean I'm the expert on it, but I'm way ahead of where I was because I leaned into somebody else. And somebody else helped me, and that has been a really valuable thing. And then this week's activity, of course, is going to be connected to those questions. Look, consider the list of topics your group brainstormed for number 2. And where can you take a step? How can you gain some ground this week to provide some of that protection for your kids as it comes to technology? Some of it's proactive. Hey, I know where we're going, or how do we make some decisions for where we're about to be? And some of it might be reactive. I might have missed the tag on this a little bit. I got to go back. I got to undo maybe a little of what we've done, but it's worth it. And then number 2, under the topic of technology and entertainment, where do you need wisdom when it comes to providing protection? What don't you know, and who might know what you don't know? Man, leaning into guys that are ahead of you, leaning into guys that have skill sets that you don't have, goes a really long way. And then I just draw your attention to a couple of the resources on the bottom of the page there. These are really for kind of young teen, kind of tween, maybe 11 to 15, I don't know, something like that. These are really easy reads, and what happens is they're probably 1 to 2 page like topics, little essays on a bunch of different topics. And I think these are great resources. I've read both of these kind of with my kids individually. So we might read through 10 and then talk about them, or you read through 5 and then talk about them, or whatever. But it's just conversation prompts on little topics that kind of move the ball down the road, and you start to be able to have those conversations with your kids. Hey, here's what we're doing and why. Hey, sweetie, what do you think about this? Hey, Junior, what do you think about this? And you invite them into a dialogue with you, not because it's 50-50 and you're making a joint decision, but because you are working with them and helping them understand. And frankly, you'll probably learn a little bit of where they have some struggles. You'll probably learn a little bit of where they might draw even a harder line than you do. That's a good thing. But having those conversations and working through them with your kids on the front end of really their kind of technology that's going to be in their pocket or at school can be a really helpful thing. So there's probably more resources out there. These are 2 good ones that I found. And if you've got some kids in that age range, I would highly recommend picking those up, working through them, and gaining some ground with your kids and not just at your kids. Does that make some sense? All right, I've yammered too much. Small group activity. Today the leader is, I don't know, figure it out in your group.